So let me pull up the project I just did, which was BMO app, I believe. All right. Yeah. Okay. So we'll go from the end result to the beginning, I guess. So this is, I think you've taken some Linda course on Visual Studio already?
Yeah.
Okay. So interface you're familiar with. Just suggestions, like docking the over here on the left side there's a tool box that has all your common controls like your buttons, text boxes, labels, all over here. This little pin here will, by default I think it's auto hidden. I like to keep mine pinned just where it's nicer. Also, now that you have your server components, you can access those on the server tab as well. Back to that. On the right side is all the project level. Now there's two tabs. One is the Solution Explorer. It has all the files of the project. And then Team Explorer is where we use to check in to source control. And that's on Aqua 34, source control is. And basically the settings is there's a team menu and team server, Aqua 34, and I've got checked on mine Aqua Neptune, which is our test environment, or actually our live environment, and then MIS and Vantage. So there's three branches in source. In the Aqua Neptune, that has our test and live both. MIS has any dashboard stuff we create. Anything non-APD up we put in MIS. Vantage we don't ever use. It was created just if we ever did create something for Vantage. But I don't believe we have anything in there. MIS, we've got quite a few I can show you. So I'll go to on the tab for Team Explorer, if you go to Source Control, actually go to the home icon first, then Source Control Explorer. It's going to bring up those branches I just mentioned. You got Aqua Neptune, MIS, and Vantage. The other one we don't check is IntelliPro. My Kiwi upstairs, you might have heard of IntelliPro, that we put in a lot of our plants, and it's a Visual Studio app, and it's a web-based app, and he has been using source control for about the last year and a half. Before that, I had no source control, none. And so we added them in there about a year and a half ago. So we don't mess with that one. Every once in a while, I've got to help him with whatever conflicts he might have sometimes. Like his computer crashed once, I had to help him with that. But the MIS has all of the non-APD stuff, like the one I created for you recently, the BMO app launch, the BMO app, and then the BMO app launch is actually just a little project to check to see if they have the right crystal running. Okay. You know that link I sent you, the executable on the end? Mm-hmm. That executable was created from this project. Let's see what else. Sales lead report, I think that was the one I did before that one, right? That one's in there. So all of these projects are added into source. So let me just show you real quick. I'll go back to the Solution Explorer tab. And this is a really simple app. It's a one-form app project. The references I had to add to the app was for Crystal, and that's it. It's got a menu, 2 labels, 2 text boxes, and a button. That's it. As far as the code behind it, to get to code in VB or any language in Visual Studio, the easiest way to do it is if you want to see the form code, is click on the top bar of the form. It'll bring you to the form load of that form. And the form load is actually where, if you wanted code to run upon load time, this is where you put it. I didn't have any code. Excuse me, I wanted to run on load time. So here you can see all of the, at first, the imports. This isn't in there by default. You've got to add them. If you have imports in Visual Studio and in VB, I'll just say VB from now are to include references you need to run the app. So references we need to run this app was Crystal, and a drawing for printing if they wanted to print, and data. And that's it. And that's what you need if you were to replicate this. The other big function in here is this report to function. I just named it report to. It's a copy from, I've used it over and over again. And it's a private function. And what private means in VB is it's used exclusively for this form. It can't be used outside of form. So if you had a multi-form app, it couldn't use it. You could create a public sub report to, and report to is just a name I made up a long time on some report I did. It could be called whatever. But private is basically for form level only. Public would be global. So if we had multiple forms and I was wanting to run something on this form, I could initiate this form and then call that sub if it was public. Within the sub, it's always important to put, you might make note of this, a try-catch statement. A try-catch statements, they might have went over it possibly in the Linda course. Try-catch is basically in Visual Studio, VB is basically to help catch any errors, whether it be a logic error or whether it be a code error or whether it be a data error connection. And when you catch it, or when it catches it, in fact, when you just type in the word try and hit enter, it creates the catch and the end try. And what it's doing here is on the X as exception, if it does catch something in this block that you put in there, it'll come to this. And then what this is doing here is basically just it would kick out a message box, and in the message box would be the contents of that exception, whatever it might be. So data can't connect, whatever it might be, incorrect input. And so the main reason to put a try-catch in your apps is to avoid app crashing. Because if you don't put try-catches in it, it's going to crash the app, basically. And so part of the programmer's job is to make sure you limit that from happening. Not to say it couldn't happen still, but you want to try your best to limit that from happening. Because every app you've ever been in has crashed at one time or the other. So it can happen. It's going to happen probably. But you want to do your best, and try-catches help you do that. And especially when you're building an app and debugging it, try-catches are nice by putting just this one line here, this message box, ex.message, kind of helps you determine what the error is. Because the nice thing about VB is it'll tell you what line the error's on if there was an error. Like an example would be, let's say I do something here like, I'm going to comment that out. Okay, so number of errors have come up. I'll go ahead and try to run it. It's not even going to run the app. It'll say there's build errors. Would you like to recommend? No, I don't want to recommend it. And it kicks down here all of the lines, starting with the first one all the way down. And it even tells you the line number. And if you click on the line, it'll take you there if you double click on it. And it says what the problem is. Report is not declared. It may be inaccessible due to its protection level. Then it gives you some options. Now these options generally don't help at all. The options don't hardly ever help. They're just suggestions that they give you. So the problem is though, because it's not declared, because I commented it out here, can't use it. It errors out. Now that I fixed it, another one would be if let's say I try to do a logic error, like say, let's see here. Oh, I know one. I think in this one there's a connection to the database right here. This is a connection to connect to, you're familiar with this with Vantage, ODBC users, username, ODBC user password. So what we can do to kind of bring an error in here is I'll copy that, duplicate it. I'm going to put in here the 18 and 26 username password, which is not the Vantage password, username password, and go ahead and run it. It's going to run fine initially. We're going to put in here range. And it ran fine. It should have. Let's see. Set login. Oh. Comment that out. Make sure I don't have anywhere else. Might be saved in the. I'm just thinking it might be saved in the crystal report. That might be why. I'm not getting an error. But anyway, if when I first ran this the first time, it wasn't embedded in the crystal report, it wasn't saved, so it gave me an error because this was the wrong connection, basically. What can I do here? Maybe let's see. Well, let's try this. This will work. That file doesn't exist if I put S in there. This is just a path to the folder name, a path to the actual file. So I'll purposely throw something in there that I know doesn't exist. Do I have a try catch in there? No, I don't. I don't have a try catch. Okay. I do have, but I don't have a message box popping up there. So let's do it again. There it is. Okay. So, basically the error on this one is cannot find the part of the path. And that's because it doesn't exist. I added two S's to it. So that's what the purpose of the try catch is, basically. And the reason it didn't pop up is I didn't have a message box in here. Kick that in here. It'll give a lot nicer message because I put in the message box. I'll have to hover over and click on it to figure out what the message is. Let's take a while to run that one. Oh, what I put in there? 03. Oh, that's going to take a while. I put 130.324.13103. That's not going to even work. Huh. 130.324.326. There we go. That'll be better. There we go. Could not find part of the path. It caught the first one because that's or the second one actually, because that's the one that, the last one it caught in the compiling was that one. So, and it caught the second one just now. So, back put that the way it was.
And that's where I would change it. Put it in the production tab.
Yeah, exactly. This is where you're going to change the folder path here and then in the file name as well. Because I use the folder path, I believe, at the very bottom here to do a process to start Windows Explorer and go to that folder name, wherever, right there. So yeah. So that's the purpose of try catch, basically, is to catch stuff. So this whole function basically takes the button, which currently has run export on it, run export. As soon as they click it, it changes the text to running process, please wait. It's just a real simple trick. Instead of, we could put a fancy pop-up spinner or whatever, but you don't really need to do that. People just need to know what's going on. And so changing the message immediately, and then disabling the button, disabling the menu to exit, disabling the text and start text from being anything happening in it, anybody entering anything. So this is real crucial here, just so the user knows what's going on, and any objects that are on the form are disabled during the time of processing. That's the first thing I did. And then I declared report as a report class, and report class comes from that crystal import that I had to do. And when you hover over anything in VB, it'll tell you if it's a class, what it is reporting to or what's referring to. Because if I commented out a class that I needed or import I needed, it would say, put a little red X there, it says error correction, and then if I hover over this even more, it'll actually give you solutions, things of that nature. Yeah, here it is. Type class is not defined. That's because I commented out. So it doesn't know what in the world I'm asking it to do. I'll put that back in, it's there. So I declared that. Report path, report, which is right here, dot file name. This is the exact path to that report you created. I moved it to the Aqua 26 path out of the version you've been using into this path, just so I wouldn't, if I mess anything up, it wouldn't affect what you've been working on. So we can leave it there because it's the same exact report, but I would suggest, what I suggest is, I don't know if Gary's helping with this, but that crystal side, I think you had in your personal folder, I believe, on Aqua 7, right? So make the changes there, make sure it all works. If there's ever changes needed to be made in the future, once it all works, then move it and copy and paste and overwrite it into that directory. That's what I suggest. So file name, it needs that. Report.load just loads a report in memory. Report.set database login sets a login database for the connection, which is Vantage in this case. Then the two things I had to set, you had in there two values for parameters. I believe it was a check start, check end, or something like that. Is that right? And so all I had to do is, all the VB needs to know or push to the report is those two parameters. And the way it's done is you just do the name of the object, report dot set parameter value, and then it asks for an index, which is 0 for the first one, 1 for the second. It does by array. So you just need to make sure if you do report parameters that the value here, the 0 or 1, they're in the order of how they're prompted in Crystal, if that makes sense. So, because in yours you had it in your Crystal, I believe, report selection logic. The first one was check first, I believe, right? Check number first or something like that. Check start was the first one, and check end or something like that was the second one. So you just need to make sure they're in that same order. And what I've done is the contents of the start was 0 and contents of end 1. And then file name, I just clear that out because I'm going to populate it with something here in a second. I declare two strings, one file name, one folder name. There's a folder name of where it exists now on the dashboard. You'll move that whenever the time comes to move it. Same with the file name. It has the folder name plus the actual file export that was needed. Then here's the powerful line here. The whole thing is it takes that report, runs it here in just a second. It was actually already ran the report in this function here. Export to disk takes the export type format, and I did it to text, but you can see there's other options. You can do Excel, HTML, PDF, rich text, whatever, XML, a whole bunch of different ones. So I just selected the text one because that was what was needed. So that's the first argument it needs. The second argument it needs is the file name. So first argument is a type of export. Second argument is the file name. And the file name has to include the path, which it does here. It includes the path right here. So the whole folder and the file name. So what it does is it runs the report and then does the export that you asked it to do without even, the report never shows up on the app. It just runs it and exports. Boom. And that's nice. Then important line here is after you've ran a report or done whatever, whether it be viewable in the app or in this case just exporting, you'll make sure and close it. Then I did a nice message box telling the user file successfully been created, path to the file name, VBCRLF, or these ampersands in between all of these, just concatenate the string to put them all together into one nice string. And so file name, and then VBCRLF is just like an enter key, so it's going to force it to a new line. So file created successfully here, file name, new line, click OK, we'll open folder. Boom, process.start, Explorer in quotes. That's going to launch Explorer, just like if you were to do a start run command in Windows. That's what it's doing. It would launch Explorer, Windows Explorer. And then this tells what is going to start. So you've got the file name, which is Explorer, and then the argument is the file or the folder actually you're wanting to open. But you can put anything in there. This argument could be anything. You can run an Explorer. It could be a file. It could be an application, whatever case may be. Then after that's launched and they see it, then I enable the start text, the menu to exit, the end text, the run button, and put the run button text back to run export. And then say if something fails in here, it will give the user a message what it is, and then it'll also enable everything back to where it was. So, one thing you probably could do instead of just an error message is put in, contact IT or something like that below that one. So, maybe a message box underneath there says contact IT. We do that a lot. I didn't do that on this one. Let's see. Other catches is I wanted to make sure whenever people start typing it, because immediately focuses on the first object. I wanted it to be numeric only. So if they type anything but a numeric, it doesn't do anything until they actually go to the next, hit a tab, or they try to go somewhere else, and then it clears it out. And so if they start with numbers and then hit a letter, it's not going to do anything, but if they try to go here, boom, clears it out. The other thing, and that's actually with this logic here, if it's not a numeric, meaning that whole text box, if something in it is not numeric, then it's going to kick up the message to the user, only numbers allowed, clear out the text box, and then set the focus back on the text box. And that's on a leave statement. Could have been on a number, could have been a mouse up or a key up. Problem with that is a lot of times it doesn't delete all the characters upon, that's what I wanted it to do. And so leave usually is less obtrusive and, less annoying. So once they type in their numbers, they can use a mouse, they can tab. The other thing I wanted is after they entered in all the numbers, if they don't want to, they can just hit enter. And hit enter, it's going to do the same thing as clicking the button. And the way I did that was on the end logic for the text box on the key press, because all of these objects, like the one here I'm mentioning, text and, has a whole bunch of methods applied to it that you can fire it to do whatever. So I'm using here two methods for this object. One is leave, to test for numeric only, and then the second is key press to determine if if e.keychar equals char 13, that's the ASCII value for enter or return on your keyboard. And so they can press any other key, it's not going to do anything, but if they press the enter key, once they type those numbers in, it's going to run that report to function, which is also ran if the user presses the button run. So let me just do something real quick. I'm going to create a new project, just a real simple one, and show you how it works to check in a project. So you wanted to play with it and create something when you get back to your desk. So you're going to do like a file, new project, and select a Windows form application. There's a whole bunch of others to choose, but that's the one we use because it's just a Windows form. And we'll just do like test or something like that. Okay. And I'm not going to really do anything in this app. I just want to show you how to add it to source control and do your first check-in. And so we'll say you got the form the way you like it. Everything's running pretty good. You can right-click on the project itself over here in Solution Explorer and add project to source control. It says the current project must be saved before it can be added to source control. So if I don't, that's one way to do it, like I just showed you, but I'm going to cancel out of that. I'm going to actually just hit save. And it actually has a new feature in Visual Studio now to where it'll ask you by default, when you save it the first time, do you want to add to source control? And you just want to make sure, if it's something you're playing around with, if this is just unchecked, if it's something you're just playing around with on your desk, because by default, I've got mine set up because I add most of my projects to source control. It's just, checked all the time. So when you do save your project for the first time and you're playing around or whatever, if you're just playing for your own little playground or whatever, just make sure that's unchecked, because this is what's going to happen. I'll show you. If I hit save, it'll prompt me, okay, where do you want to save it at? I'm going to go ahead and just show you real quick. I'm going to put it in the MIS, which is everything outside of APD. So what it's going to do is it's going to have a path of MIS test. Click OK, save it, and it's doing its saving now. And then I'm going to go to the Team Export tab and hit Pending Changes. And we should see come up here, change I just made the BMO and the new test project. And notice it's got everything in there. The BMO actually is just going to have what we changed, which was a .vb file and two .vbs and that. And that's because I moved some stuff around on the form. Nothing else is in there. And source control will do that. It'll only check in, ask you to check in what you've changed. It's not going to check everything in. But it will the first time around because it's the very first time. So it's going to check the entire project in. So I'm going to go ahead and do you have to put a comment in here of some type. So I'm going to do CK test app. And that is a required thing. So you got to put a comment in of some type. So anytime you make a change in an app, say if I come back to the BMO and made a change, I would put in the comment what kind of change I made. And just check it in. Now what I'm going to do is exit out of that project and show you in MIS, that new test project. It's in there. And anybody in the group now, regardless of what computer you're on, can fire Visual Studio, go into source control, click MIS, and double click on SLN. If you don't have it on your PC, the first time it'll map it. It'll ask you where you want it to map the first time. And my MIS folder is mapped on my desktop. That's where I asked it to be mapped. So once I did that the first time, any other project in MIS, it knows to put it in that MIS folder the first time. So you just basically, what I always tell people is source control, when you check in, the next time you come in, I always open up all my Visual Studio projects from source control. That way I know I'm opening up the right project. Because, you know, you can mistakenly have a duplicate on your machine, possibly. And this gives you the exact path, but also you can just double click right on that SLN file, fire right up. And before I forget, I'm going to delete that and go down here and delete it. And I do have to check in what I just did. And now it's out of my MIS list. And so the whole purpose of source control is for versioning and changes. You can also in source control determine or view history. So if I wanted to view the app we just created, the history of that app, I can view the history of, I started it on 12/10 at 3:02. All right. Yep. And then latest change was today at 10:16. The test app. I opened it up today at 10:16. And so it gives you the iteration. And when you open up, right click and do a change data set, it'll actually show you everything that was in there. You double click, it'll bring it up as well. And so the data set refers to what was actually in that change. Yeah. And if you can roll it back, you know, there's been times with, in development cycle of APD, somebody made a change they didn't want to check in or checked in mistakenly, and he rolled back to that version prior. So that's a nice thing about source control. All right. So any questions?
No.
All right. So basically what I've shown you is how to check this one in. Forget. I don't think I have anything. Yeah, I've already checked everything in. Let's go back to the MIS BMO. I didn't show you this in the BMO launch. All this is a little utility I created that checks to see if SAP exists, Crystal exists on that machine. If it does exist, it launches this URL. There's actually a network path to the name of the app.application. If it doesn't exist, it prompts the user Crystal needs to be installed, and then this line here prompts the app for the install, and then this line here, after it's installed, launches BMO app. I'm going to use that on all of the APD apps as well. The last thing I want to show is publishing. So let's do that. Let's go to the BMO app, because I did make some changes to it. All right, so say you made some changes, what you're going to do in the future, right? You're going to make the path changes folder. Say you do that next week or whatever. Make those changes. You come over here, Solution Explorer, to Team Explorer, check it in. Then you're going to go to the Solution Explorer, right-click on the project, go to Properties. It's going to bring you to this screen, which is going to have application name, compile, debug, all the way down to publish. Publish is the one you want to go to. And what it's doing is it's going to publish this app that's local right now to the Aqua 26 folder. Let me bring that up. Let's do it this way, it's easier. That way you can kind of see it. Okay, so right now, what it's going to do is it's going to recreate this BMO.html, which is basically if I can open this up, let's do it with Internet Explorer. Looks like this. It just has an install button, that's it, nothing fancy. It's going to do that, it's going to recreate that. It's also going to recreate this BMO app.application, which is the application manifest for OneClick. And then this BMO app launch.exe won't touch because that's that little one I created, that utility app to check to see if Crystal exists, and if it does, to launch it. And then there's your report app, the Crystal report. That's not going to change that one either. It will come in here though, and notice since the iteration of changes, it has all the versions that have been published from 0 down to 4. So we should see a 5 show up here. And inside of each one of these folders is basically the .application, the manifest, and that's it. And it's going to take these files and install on the local machine that it's on, clicked on. So all you've got to do when you come here is literally just click Publish Now, and it's going to launch it. Mine goes to text pack because I was working in something in HTML that was, I wanted to open a text pack. So now, well, let's do it from the actual app itself. Close that out. Oh, it should be something. There it is. And let's make sure I've got that checked right over here. All right. Oh, the application files just tells you all the applications, files that are needed in the app, which is the executable of the app, the icon, and a couple of manifest files are in there. Prerequisites, I don't have any prerequisites to this one. I check it myself with that little utility app. Updates, I didn't check this, I need to do that. This update will actually check to see that the application should check for updates before it launches, and that's it. That's all you got to do. And that's already done. I just did it. I didn't have it checked though. And all it's going to do basically is every time the app runs, if the current version they're running is older than the version out there on the network, it's going to prompt for an install. So let me see if that, let me republish this now.
That's how you roll out your
Yeah, so, yep, so I'm going to do it now. It should catch it. I have exited. Oh, so that's the latest changes. Okay. Let's go back. One before. Just, there it is. I didn't launch mine earlier. Okay, so let's do it one more time. Make sure it's working.
That's what it did to it when I first used it.
Yeah.
That's what it did.
Yeah, so there you go. New version is available. Do you want to download? That was must have been a version I was playing with on my own. Name of it, the exact path where it's at. That's it. So it did it. And so this is actually set now. When you go back to your PC and fire up Visual Studio, you can go to the Team Explorer, Source Control Explorer, BMO app, double click on the SLN file, or SNL, Silent Light file. And that's going to open it up, and then you can make your changes that you need whenever to the path. And that's it. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but at least that'll get your feet wet, I think. Make it, what I'd like you to do is maybe go over and see if you can open it up and see if it maps it to your computer, and I'll watch you do that. That way you can get up and going at least, and then let you play around with it. Sound good? All right, so let me go ahead and end this, and I'll send you this